and raise a hullabaloo at the ball game today.
Hey everybody, it's me, Rick Acosta, the Dodger Card Collector, coming to you with another video. Tonight is Thursday. Thursday what? October 10th. I had to look it up on my phone. Recording this late on a Thursday night, so this probably won't come out until Friday. But I thought I'd come on because I did not come on last week, and I had something I wanted to talk to you guys about, and I'm going to talk to you about it today. But I just didn't have the energy. I was like, I knew what cards I wanted to show you, I knew what I wanted to talk about, but I was just like, I don't want to get in front of the camera, and I don't want to take cards out of my storage or out of my binders. So I was just in one of my moods, so no video. But I thought I would come on tonight because it's Thursday night. All the baseball games have ended. All the hockey games have ended. Tonight was opening night for the Kings. They beat the Buffalo Sabres. The Thursday night football just ended. The 49ers beat the Seahawks. And I thought, let me get on the air tonight with you guys, just because tomorrow's game 5 between the Dodgers and the Padres. And I don't know what type of mood I'll be in after the game. So I thought, let's get on the air tonight. Let's get on YouTube. And we can talk a little bit. Now, one of the baseball games that just ended were the Yankees and the Royals. And last week I was thinking about it. Growing up in the 70s, the Yankees and the Royals had 4 really great American League Championship Series in 1976, 1977, 1978. The one that doesn't get talked about as much as 1980. And also at the same time, the Dodgers and the Phillies, 1977, 1978, and then later in 1983, but by then it was a different, Dodgers and Phillies both had different players by that point. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that, just because I remember, now when you watch the playoffs, we got all these wild card teams. We have 3 divisions now. But there was a time that when you won, to take the Yankees or the Brooklyn Dodgers, up until 1969, when you won the National League, when you won the American League, you went straight to the World Series. There were no playoffs. If you were tied, kind of like the way the Dodgers and the Giants were in 1951 and 1962, you would have a 3-game series to determine the winner of the National League. But other than that, you go straight to the World Series. Then in 1969, that changed. With additional expansion, National and American League broke up into 2 different divisions, the East and the West. And in 1969, we saw the Mets play the Braves in the NLCS, and the Orioles play the Minnesota Twins in the ALCS. I think I said the Mets and the Braves were the NLCS. I could be wrong. All right, I might have said that wrong. But anyway, so back then you played you played a playoff series, best 3 of 5, and then the winner would meet the American League winner would meet the National League winner in the World Series, best of 4 or 7. That's changed over the years. It's crazy now. You got like 2 wild card series and best out of 3, and then they go to the NL and ALDS. That's best 3 of 5, and you get to the American League and Championships, American League and National League Championship Series. That's best 4 of 7. Then you get to the World Series. That's best 4 of 7. That takes a month, and by then the best teams are all wiped out, and that's one thing we've been seeing lately. But as of this recording, the Yankees have won, so there's a bye team that has won, and we'll see. And then the Phillies have already lost. Dodgers are still in it, and the Guardians just took the Tigers to Game 5 on Saturday. So it should be interesting. But I wanted to talk about the playoffs in the 1970s when I grew up, specifically the Yankees and the Royals, to a lesser extent the Dodgers and the Phillies. But as I mentioned earlier, the Royals and the Yankees played in 1976, 1977, 1978. I'm going to leave a lot of links, by the way, just because I could have just made this whole video recapping those 3 series. But in 76, the Yankees played the Royals, And what my memory of that was that the series was tied at 2 at Yankee Stadium. The Yankees were up by 3, and I think it was the 8th inning that George Brett hit a 3-run home run to tie the game. And quietest home run I've ever seen on Yankee Stadium, at Yankee Stadium. I literally just saw the clip again just now. I was like, oh my God, it's so quiet. Then Chris Chambliss later hit the game-winning home run, I think in the bottom of the ninth, and all of Yankee Stadium literally poured out onto the field. Chambliss never even touched home plate. It was so chaotic on the field, but it was such a great memory. And I remember I was all of 11, and the ABC went into the losers' locker room, and George Brett was there being interviewed, and he was pretty much crying. And I remember a buddy of mine and I decided we wanted to write letters to George Brett and tell him that we thought he was a great ball player and those type of things. I don't think we ever did it, but that was the first time I ever felt sorry for like a losing player. Then in 77, Game 5, Greg Nettles and George Brett got into this massive fight, and nobody got kicked out of the game, which I love. George Brett hits a triple in Game 5, and he kind of pushes Greg Nettles as he slides in the third, and Greg Nettles kind of kicks George Brett in the face. Brett gets up and starts punching him, and they start wrestling. Everybody's out there. Ron Guidry, Thurman Munson, all the Royals are just running out there, and nobody gets kicked out. And that's what I loved about baseball back then. There was no trash talking after that. The fight ended. Everybody went back to their respective positions. No one got kicked out. Game resumed. The Royals ended up winning. The Yankees ended up winning again, 3-2. Then in 78, George Brett again, the Royals were back to Yankee Stadium. George Brett hit 3 home runs in one game, and the Royals still lost. I think that was in 5 games too. And then eventually in 1980, the Royals, I think, swept the Yankees and went on to win their first American League title and their first World Championship. No, take that back. The Phillies won that year. But they did go to the World Series that year. At the same time, in 77 and 78, the Dodgers and the Phillies got hot. And I was looking at that. In 1977, the Phillies were up 5-1 in Game 1. Steve Carlton was pitching for the Phillies. Dodgers had the bases loaded. Ron Cey hits a grand slam home run to tie the game. Dodger Stadium erupted. It was crazy. I remember just screaming at home. Phillies eventually won that game. But then in Game 2, in the 4th inning, the Dodgers loaded the bases again. And Dusty Baker hit a home run, I think off Jim Lombard. Dusty Baker hits a grand slam home run. Dodgers win that game. The killer game was Game 3. Game 3, the Phillies were up 5-3 in the bottom of the ninth. Vic Davalillo bunt single. Manny Mota doubles off the left field wall. Then an error on the same play on the throw to second lets Davalillo score. Mota advances to third. This is all with 2 outs. Davey Lopes is up. Manny Mota at third. They might have pinch hitted for him at that point, I think. Lopes hits a hard liner off Mike Schmidt's knee. It bounces to Larry Boa. Boa throws to first. It looked like they tied. Tie goes to the runner. Lopes Davey Lopes scores. Davey Lopes gets the hit. Whoever the pinch runner was ties the game. We're tied at 5. Phillies are furious. Danny Ozark, Larry Boa, everybody's just complaining. Phillies try to pick off Lopes off first. The ball gets away. Lopes ends up on second. Bill Russell hits him in. Dodgers up 6-5 all of a sudden. Save it. Dodgers win in the get 3 outs in the bottom of the ninth. Dodgers up 2-1. The next night, it rained the entire effing day. They wanted to postpone the game, but back then they wouldn't postpone the game because it was a Sunday night and they didn't want to interfere with the NFL and Monday Night Football. And I remember Tommy John pitched I think it was a 2-0 shutout. And the Dodgers went on to win the National League Championship that year, where eventually they lose to the Yankees. What else is new? 78, 2 teams meet again. Game 4, Dodger Stadium. Dodgers are up 2-1. Dodgers have the winning run at second base. Gary Maddox, one of the better playing center fielders back then, defensive center fielders. I think he made an error, and then eventually Ron Cey got a base hit that scored the winning run, or Bill Russell got the base hit, and Ron Cey scored the winning run. Dodgers won. Fans poured onto the field. Dodgers went on to the World Series and lost to the Yankees again. But those were great series. It was something we looked forward to. And I'm also going to leave a link for Mike, the sports history collector, because he just did a really nice video on the 1974 NLCS between the Dodgers and the Pirates. And he talks about his memories of going to those games as a Dodger fan back then. But the playoffs were really special back then. I'm not saying they're not special now, but those are the memories I had as a kid. And to this day, I still think about it. I saw lots of great series, Pirates and the Reds, Orioles and the A's. I remember the first time the Red Sox beat the A's in '75. I thought that was pretty exciting. I remember the first time the Angels won in 1979. I remember when the Red Sox beat the Angels in 1986. Just crazy things. Mets, Astros, same year. It's a little different now, but back then when it was just NLCS, ALCS, it was a lot of fun. So, in honor of talking about the playoffs, the NLCS, and the ALCS, I'm going to show you my favorite sports cards from the postseason. So, in 1960, Topps started creating World Series cards. They did that throughout the 60s. Then in the 70s, they started to add NLCS and ALCS cards. So we're going to take a look at some of those cards from those sets. So let's turn the camera around. I'll be right back. All right, so let's show some World Series cards, and let's show some League Championship Series cards. As I mentioned to you, these began in 1960 with the 1959 World Series. I picked two cards. Obviously, I picked this one because this is the one on the right, because that's the Dodgers celebrating winning the World Series in 1959. And I actually picked this card here. One of the games that the White Sox ended up winning, where Luis Aparicio is stealing second base. That's Maury Wills. You guys all know Maury Wills didn't have a contract with Topps. His first card is his first official card is a 1963 Fleer card, and he wouldn't appear in a Topps set until 1967 with his name on it. But he is in this card for the 1959 World Series. That's Maury Wills catching the ball while Luis Aparicio steals second base. That's the reason I picked that card. So I don't have cards from all the years, so I'm going to be skipping around here. So I'm going to skip now till 1963, when the Yankees, Whitey Ford, beat the Giants. And I always like having a Whitey Ford card in my collection. I have several. Big fan of his. And the Yankees we're coming near the end of the Yankee dynasty at this point, but they're still fun to have when it comes to cards, that's for sure. So that's Whitey Ford. Another great pitcher, one of my favorites, obviously. From the 1964 Topps set, Sandy Koufax then set a World Series record of striking out 15 players. Eventually, Bob Gibson would pass him a few years later. I don't know if Gibson still has the record. I doubt it, but here is Koufax strikes out 15. This is from the 1964 Topps set. And let's see, I've shown you a couple of pitchers. Let's show you some hitters. Mickey Mantle from the 1965 Topps set. This is the 1964 World Series, Mantle's clutch home run. And this was probably the most expensive World Series card I ever bought. It's not graded or anything, but Mickey Mantle's name's on it. So I think I paid like $30 for it. And, that's a great way to get a cheap Mickey Mantle, but at the same time, someone's going to say, God, you paid $30 for a World Series card? But that is Mickey Mantle. I cannot tell you, because the number's not there, but that windup looks a lot like Bob Gibson's. I'd have to look that up on Baseball Reference to see what happened in that actual game. I know somebody out there knows, and they're going to make a comment on it. So have at it. All right, let's see. We're going to move up to 1968, where the Red Sox played the Cardinals. Rico Petrocelli, Sox 2 home runs. And that was when the Cardinals ended up winning this World Series. But this day, it was the Red Sox who won. And then the next year, 1969 Topps for the 1968 World Series. This is one of my latest pickups, by the way. And that's Bob Gibson, now with the new strikeout record of 17. He sets the new record. And he won his 6th straight World Series game. Damn. He was a great pitcher. And that's Bob Gibson. This would be the last year we would have just World Series cards. In 1970, because for 1970 Topps, we ended up having NLCS and ALCS cards as well. And back then, they did the neat thing, as I'm showing you the celebration cards of the Orioles and the Mets. They did a card for each individual game. So each game got one. And here's Nolan Ryan. I remember getting this as a kid and just going, look, that's Nolan Ryan. There's Nolan Ryan. And then here's the Orioles on the bottom. Oops. There are the Orioles on the bottom. And sweeping the Twins. I think that's Frank Robinson. And then the neat thing was that was like in Series 2 or Series 3. Let me see. Actually, it's Series 2. It'd be Series 2. But then I want to say Series 3, probably Series 3. Then we had World Series cards. So there was League Championship Series, and then there was World Series cards in 1970. And the format's a little different here. You see the Sporting News logo on the top. This is Tommy Agee making one of his incredible catches in Game 3. So in 70 and in 1971, we got cards for each postseason game. And in 1971, I chose just a World Series card, but it's my favorite card because I used to think this is World Series Game 5. Brooks Robinson commits robbery. My brother loved Brooks Robinson, and I honestly thought that they took Brooks Robinson out to the middle of the desert to take this photo. Back then, I didn't realize that, no, this is just an action photo from the 1970 World Series. But that was Brooks Robinson. I think he won the MVP that World Series, and he saved the day with his glove a lot of times. Now, the next year, 1971 World Series, featured in the 1972 top set, Steve Blass, Game 7. I was a big Steve Blass fan as a kid. I always felt bad for what happened to him after Clemente passed away, where he developed some type of syndrome where he couldn't throw the ball over the plate anymore. But he was a very good pitcher. And I know I have some Pirates fans out there who watch. I think he went on to become a Pirates announcer. And I'm a big Steve Blass fan. I always feel bad when someone, when a pitcher goes, a pitcher starts pitching bad, and they, oh my God, it's just like Steve Blass. It's like, yeah, Steve Blass had some good years before things went wrong. So that's Game 7 from the Pirates and the Orioles. One of my favorite cards from the 70s, the 1974 Topps, featuring Willie Mays. I call this the last Willie Mays card. His last card was in 1973 when he was on the Mets, but in 1974 they threw him onto a World Series card in a game where the Mets beat the A's 10-7. The A's would go on to win in 7 games, but that is Willie Mays. Love Willie. All right, I picked this card out just because it reminded me of a friend of a Little League teammate. His name was Chris Brunwyn. Haven't spoken to him in at least 50 years probably. But he had this card. It's the 1975 Topps Dodgers versus A's 1974 World Series, Game 5. And the reason I picked it was because Joe Rudi had just hit a home run. But look at the dirty look Ron Say's giving him as he's rounding third. And that's my memory. I think there was some fans were throwing like frisbees and stuff from the stands. Kind of like, well, the Dodger fans weren't throwing frisbees, but there was a delay in the game, and Mike Marshall, The Dodger reliever chose not to throw warm-up pitches while they cleaned everything up. And then Joe Rudi hit the first home run up, or hit the first pitch for a home run. And the A's ended up winning 3-2, or winning that game 3-2 and winning the World Series 4-1. But just love that look Ron Cey's giving him there. Now, unfortunately, after 1975, Topps really got cheap or chintzy. In 1976, they made one card for the World Series, and that was a bummer. There's Luis Tiant, rest in peace. There's Pete Rose, rest in peace. Total coincidence that I picked this, honestly. I just wanted to show you guys how things had changed by 1976. We only get one World Series card. And by 77, we would get 2 cards. They'd show both. They'd put 2 games on one card. So here are the Reds and the Yankees. The Reds swept the Yankees 4-0. And because of that, we get 2 whopping cards. So at that point, I was kind of bummed out. Got what? One more here. In 78, they must have heard the complaints from people because they finally added playoff cards. So here's the Dodgers beating the Phillies in 4. And then there's one World Series card, which is Reggie Jackson. And that's really it. I can't tell you much what happens modern-wise. I don't know if they make these cards now for postseason. They might. I think if you buy Topps Heritage, Topps Heritage does, because I know I've bought some of those. But I don't know what the Topps base set does. But I used to really love World Series cards. And one last card. This is a World Series card. This is from 1989 Upper Deck, and I'd be remiss if I did not show this. And this is Kirk Gibson hitting his famous home run in Game 1. Trust me, as a Dodger fan, sometimes I get tired of watching this home run. But that night he hit a home run, and Upper Deck happened to capture his, if you want to call it a trot, to first base, raising his right arm. Card number 666, which I have mentioned to you guys in the past. First 3 to 5 years of Upper Deck, all card number 666 are Dodger players. And it was some VP at Upper Deck who was an Angels fan who thought it was a good idea. So that's Kirk Gibson. But those, you guys, are my World Series cards, my League Championship Series cards, in honor of the games we're seeing this week, the games that we'll hopefully continue watching as we get onto the National League and American League Championship Series and eventually the World Series. But I wanted to take a look back at some of these cards from the past. So if you stuck around this long, thanks so much. We'll talk to you next time.
It's a beautiful day for a ball game, today. If you and I are out of dollars and cents,